Holiday train garden is complete with some fan favorite Baltimore businesses and working fire engines. Mark Clark headed over to the Fire Museum of Maryland and gives us a look at this year's iconic train garden.
That's right. I've been hanging out with Amy. Let me tell you something. Amy Lansman knows everything you need to know about the trains. It's your time, right? The holiday season.
You bet.
The Fire Museum. I mean, tell us about everything that's offered here. It's amazing.
Well, I hear the sound of trains behind me. That's the sound of the holidays here at the Fire Museum. But our Fire Museum has had a train garden. We've been going since the mid-1980s. It's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. I used to take my kids here when they were little, and they ain't so little anymore. So. I mean, we open on Saturday at 10 a.m., 10 to 4, and the train garden is included with your admission to the museum, which of course gives you the whole museum and all our wonderful fire engines, and our kids' discovery room, which is a great play area for everybody. And this year it's really cool. We're going to have extended hours over the holidays. We have some Sunday hours. Our Sunday hours are noon to 4. So Saturdays 10 to 4, Sundays noon to 4. Check it out on the website, firemuseummd.org, nonprofit, we're .org.
I love it. Families, come check this out. It's a nice snapshot of history and so much great information and a fun time for the family.
Well, coming up on Fox 45 at 6 o'clock, new information about how authorities tracked down a second suspect in the Morgan State University mass shooting. How our reporting led to the arrest. And tipped restaurant workers in Baltimore City could soon receive minimum wage. A closer look at what that could mean for customers.
We got plenty of rain that's moving through central Maryland, and we are still under weather alert. I'm going to let you know how bad things are going to be for the rest of the evening and what kind of improvements could be on the way by Thanksgiving in my Weather Authority forecast.
Fox 45 uncovering new details about the latest suspect arrested in the Morgan State mass shooting, what we're learning tonight about the suspect's troubled past. We continue to press for transparency from Monzi as some Safe Streets employees face a federal investigation. Why events the program was supposed to hold are raising more questions.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 6.
And we are on weather alert tonight with heavy rain moving through our region right now as thousands of Marylanders are either on the roads or getting ready to hit the roads for the holidays. Here's a look at conditions throughout the area, with some expected to see at least 2 inches of rain. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Mary Bubala. Let's get right over to Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers with the latest on this rainfall. Jonathan?
Yeah, Mary, things getting worse before they are going to be getting better. Notice all of the yellows and the oranges moving in from the south and west, just getting slathered with heavy rain and just a really bad time to get it. We are running about 7 inches, actually over 7 inches until today, below average in terms of rainfall in the year, and we are in now moderate drought. So, I mean, man, we need rain, but we just don't need it on busy travel days like today. Now, like tomorrow either, but I think tomorrow's going to get better. Look at all that heavy rain still to come out to our west. It looks like today is the worst of it. Tomorrow, the greens move in for holiday travel. Even most of the country looking pretty good, except the Pacific Northwest. And if you're going to be doing a getaway on Thanksgiving, looks like the Pacific Northwest, not great. The Intermountain West, not great. But most of the East Coast, A-OK. I'll let you know when our rain ends tonight in my Weather Authority forecast.
The Weather Authority Storm Center in your hands. Download the free WBFF Weather Authority app for your smartphone. Use our powerful Doppler radar to follow storms right down to your street. Just go to the App Store and search WBFF to get started.
Well, U.S. officials say they are closer than ever to a deal between Israel and Hamas, which would secure the release of dozens of hostages in exchange for a days-long ceasefire.
We're now very close, very close. We could bring some of these hostages home very soon, but I don't want to get into the details of things because nothing is done until it's done. And we have more to say, we will, but things are looking good at the moment.
Well, the State Department says the United States is in close contact with Israel, along with the government of Qatar, which is helping mediate a potential agreement. Stay with Fox 45 News for the latest on this conflict right now. At 6:15, Sinclair national correspondent Christine Frizzell will join us live with more on how the war is affecting Jewish and Palestinian communities here in America. Mary?
Kai, thank you. Some new details tonight about the latest suspect arrested in connection to last month's mass shooting at Morgan State University. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell has more on the suspect's troubled past and how our coverage played a part in his capture.
After being featured on Maryland's Most Wanted, investigators say they received several tips regarding Javon Williams, saying that not only was he still in D.C., but continuing to commit violent crimes. The search for Morgan State University mass shooting suspect Javon Williams now over. Investigators say after appearing on Maryland's Most Wanted, police received tips Williams, a known member of the notorious D.C. gang, the Kennedy Street Crew, was still in the area and committing armed robberies and carjackings. Investigators finally tracking down Williams November 17th after they say he and 2 other suspects went on a crime spree in D.C. Williams, 20-year-old Keon Brown, and a 16-year-old were all taken into custody after a brief pursuit. Investigators believe he's a member of the Kennedy Street Crew, and at the time of the Morgan State University mass shooting was already facing federal charges related to the gang's alleged drug trafficking operation. In last month's episode on Maryland's Most Wanted, it was revealed at the time of the mass shooting on MSU's campus, Williams was already wanted for his alleged role in a federal drug trafficking case. Back in June of this year, officials in D.C. announced the takedown of the operation and detailed the defendants were members of the gang Kennedy Street Crew. Williams and some of the others listed still at large.
It is not just the danger of the drugs being peddled, it is also the money and firearms associated with these drug operations. They combine to form a toxic mix for fueling violence.
Police unable to track down Williams before investigators say he and a 17-year-old opened fire on MSU's campus, shooting 5 people, including 4 students, in early October. Now we're learning one of the suspects arrested alongside Williams, 20-year-old Keon Brown, is also listed in this federal drug trafficking indictment. In the indictment, investigators detail between 2019 and 2023, the Kennedy Street crew sold marijuana, fentanyl, and crack, used firearms to protect territory and contraband, and concealed their proceeds using shell businesses and other methods of laundering. A copy of a search warrant executed back in January of this year shows Williams and Brown as 2 of the 9 people charged after agents found the group in a home in D.C. with nearly a dozen firearms. 2 members now finally off the streets. I asked officials why it took so long to track down Williams, that indictment back in June. The mass shooting on MSU's campus nearly 4 months later. Investigators say he was likely receiving help. A 17-year-old also charged, you may recall, in the MSU shooting, both now in custody. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
As the federal investigation involving a Safe Streets employee continues, Fox 45 News remains committed to digging into the violence intervention effort. Mackenzie Frost is questioning city leaders about events held by Safe Streets and when there will be more transparency provided to the public.
On social media, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement promoting several Safe Streets events, including this expungement clinic held here at the Belvedere Safe Streets location off Park Heights Avenue. The flyer says the event lasting from 3 to 6 in the afternoon. But when Fox 45's photographer showed up around 4:30, the door was locked. Monzi completely ignoring our questions about the event. The apparent lack of event, despite being advertised, isn't the only thing we've reached out to Monzi asking questions about. The city's online map showing where the Safe Street zones are and each location. The map lists the Franklin Square location at 5 North Calhoun Street. So we went to that spot. We found a building seemingly under construction. No signs of Safe Streets. Monzi again ignoring our questions about the location of this site. And that brings us here to the whiteboards. We know the feds are investigating at least one Safe Streets location and at least one employee. We know we've been sending several questions to the mayor and his administration asking things like, will you release the names of the Safe Streets workers? Mayor Brandon Scott often says no. Will you launch an investigation into all the Safe Streets sites? Again, the mayor says the current federal investigation is isolated to just one location and one employee right now. So he says more investigations aren't necessary. So now we have some new questions for the mayor and for Monzi about the Safe Streets program. According to the contracts the city has with the 2 nonprofits, those organizations are supposed to cover the cost for the background checks for Safe Streets employees. But we have documentation showing that the nonprofits are seeking reimbursement from the city for those background checks. So we want to know who's actually responsible for covering the cost of the background checks for the Safe Streets employees. And that raises questions about an audit. Some members of the city's audit commission have told us that they support an audit of Monzi. And we asked Mayor Brandon Scott about it recently. Here's what he said.
I've talked to the comptroller. We're open for any audit and we'll be working with him first because that is what the people of Baltimore have voted by charter to have the city comptroller of Baltimore City duly elected by the residents to do that job. And we know he's a fabulous comptroller and he'll do that.
So if the state auditors were to say they wanted to do it, would you support that?
I just answered that question. City first, and then if the state wants to step in and do that, they can have at it. We're not hiding anything, and we know that the organizations that we work with, LifeBridge and others, who have audits of their own, they're not hiding anything either.
So as we continue to dig into the inner workings of the Safe Streets program, we need help from you. If you have any information about this program that you think I need to know about, send it to me directly. safestreetstips@gmail.com. Meanwhile, we'll continue to demand answers from Mayor Brandon Scott and his administration about the Safe Streets program. At the Accountability Desk, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Tipped restaurant workers in Baltimore City could soon receive minimum wage. It comes following a similar initiative in D.C., which went into effect back in May, part of a nationwide movement to raise the minimum wage for tipped restaurant workers. The advocacy group One Fair Wage is now involved in efforts to change the pay model for restaurant workers here in Baltimore. The group says it will rally at City Hall on December 6th, looking to raise pay for tipped workers. But City Council's agenda for December 6th has yet to reflect a bill proposal on this issue. Those opposed to the bill say it could push restaurants to move away from tipping altogether. As war rages on in the Middle East, humanitarian agencies raising concern about the ongoing crisis in Gaza. Why U.S. officials say essential aid should not depend on a hostage deal.
Anti-Semitic incidents remain a huge concern for our nation's top law enforcement. I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington with new actions and new threats.
So we're hopeful that that would take place. But again, it has always been our position that the two don't need to be linked, that humanitarian assistance should be delivered as quickly as possible for the benefit of the Palestinian people.
The Biden administration pushing for more aid to enter Gaza, emphasizing that humanitarian aid for Palestinian civilians should not be contingent on a hostage deal. According to the United Nations, before the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel, about 455 aid trucks entered the enclave every day. Since then, Israel has severely limited deliveries of food, water, and other supplies. Aid workers say the trucks coming through Rafah crossing fall far short of what is needed. Meanwhile, at home, growing signs of direct links between the violence in the Middle East and threats here in the U.S. It has prompted state and local lawmakers in New York and elsewhere to demand changes at a time that region appears especially vulnerable. Sinclair national correspondent Christine Frizzau joins us live with details on this tonight. Christine?
In New York City, where we've seen, huge Jewish population and Arab population. It's also where schools like Cooper Union and Columbia are under investigation for alleged incidents of both Islamophobia and anti-Semitism on campus. The group Students for Justice in Palestine more vocal than ever at universities nationwide. But some now accuse them of supporting Hamas and terrorism. A bipartisan group of New York lawmakers asking Governor Kathy Hochul to shut down the group at area universities. In a letter writing, SJPs across the state have released statements that endorse attacks on civilians, arguing their rallies include chants from the Hamas charter, calling for the death and annihilation of Jews and Israel. Some chapters already suspended elsewhere. At a time, the Department of Education has launched an investigation into 7 schools for alleged incidents of anti-Semitism, which have skyrocketed since the October 7th Hamas-led attack in Israel and the weeks of bombing by Israel that have followed in Gaza.
Colleges should be places where students could express themselves, and it's okay to have different beliefs. And it's okay to express those different beliefs. But when it becomes a threat to students, or when students can't feel safe walking from their dorm to their classroom because they're afraid that they're going to get harmed, that's unacceptable.
A professor at Wake Forest University resigning after backlash from this post on X, appearing to sympathize with the October 7th attack, writing, "So it's kind of a duh, but if you turn me out of my house and confine what's left of my family to the small, impoverished state you run as an open-air prison, I could be tempted to shoot up your dance party." There are also new alarm bells in New York, following a brand new threat assessment by the New York State Intelligence Center of increased threats of a terror attack. Governor Hochul announcing new actions and $3 million in new funding to beef up staffing. But she's also demanding social media companies take action.
And as the steward of the 21st century public square, TikTok and other social media companies, they must start to regulate vile hate speech that originates on their platforms.
Now, all of these warnings come as the FBI says it had already been operating under high alert before the October 7th attack, and ever since then, threats have been surging. Mary?
Christine, with local lawmakers calling for some of these student groups to be shut down, there has to be some free speech issues here, which you talked about in some of your report.
Yeah, you know, I should say there's already been a lawsuit filed by the University of Florida chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine. They're challenging the order issued by that university, and they, along with the ACLU, say their free speech has been violated.
All right, Christine Frisell, such a difficult issue. Thank you tonight, reporting live from D.C. We appreciate it.
Well, we remain under weather alert through the remainder of the evening as we continue with some heavy rain. Westminster up to Hagerstown into southern Pennsylvania. Here in Baltimore, patchy heavier rain up and down 95, especially right here near Severn as we're traveling. Potentially that'd be, I think, Route 100 there. It's unmarked, but I believe that's 100, not too far from the airport. And then you get farther north and west, there's some heavier rain. Yes, more coming our way later tonight into early tomorrow. Thankfully, it's not what they're seeing well off to our north, which is wintry precipitation. You got rain mixing with snow and ice in the pink and the purple, even some winter weather advisories up into Vermont and northern New England. And then we've also had some winter weather advisories over portions of West Virginia and extreme western Maryland with some of the rain mixing with ice there. Most of that's changed over to full-on liquid at this point, but still just a harrowing trip home on the commute and a harrowing trip for any Thanksgiving travels this evening. I know a lot of folks trying to get earlier and earlier starts here, but this time it may pay to wait till tomorrow because drying weather follows this latest weather maker as a cold front swings through tonight. Actually won't be that much colder tomorrow. It might be warmer, in fact, at least for one day as sunshine returns and some milder air stays. Mile 1 Tallahassee Cam, it's raining and raining good. Look at those wet roadways. That is nasty on York Road right now. Winds out of the east-southeast at 10 miles an hour. Humidity, of course, it's very high. It is sopping damp. The heavier rain continues to stream in from the west through 8:15 tonight through about 11:45 this evening. Could even have a rumble of thunder here. I wouldn't be too surprised as temperatures, as warmer air continues to push on in. Could be as high as a mid to upper 50s by about midnight as that heaviest rain glides on through. And then a late night fall back into the low to mid 50s. And tomorrow, high temperatures right around lunchtime could hit near 60 for a time. It's going to be a blustery day with some sunshine returning, but overall, a much, much better scenario than we're dealing with tonight. We've already seen, again, up to about a ½ inch, 3/4 of an inch of rain. We could tack on another 1.5 inches to maybe locally 2 inches in spots. So rain, heavy at times, should be drying by early tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, much better for What most folks say is the busiest travel day of the year. High near 62, breezy, milder with clouds and sun. I'm going to let you know how things look for Thanksgiving all the way through your big shopping weekend and back to work next week in my exclusive 10-day forecast.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Here's something you don't see every day, and for good reason. This scary scene shows the Black Bear wildfire burning along I-40 near the Tennessee-North Carolina line. It was sparked last week by a car crash and fueled by drought conditions. So far, it's burned more than 1,800 acres. Meanwhile, from Pikes Peak, Colorado to Green Bay, Wisconsin, winter is starting to show its icy grip.
Listen to Off the Radar. New episodes every Tuesday. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
A commission in Maine investigating what led up to last month's deadly mass shooting in Maine, how they're seeking justice for the victims' families. Officials in Maine setting up a commission to investigate last month's mass shooting in Lewiston. Dan Lamparello from our Sinclair sister station in Portland has the latest on their recommendations.
Several people have said to me in the last few days that this is a daunting task.
The task for these 7 members, getting to the bottom of Maine's most devastating day, all within 6 months.
Now, 6 months is a very ambitious goal, but highly desirable for obvious reasons.
The independent commission was formed this month through an executive order by Governor Janet Mills. Its members are made up of experts in law and mental health who will investigate the response to the Lewiston mass shooting and the potential missed warning signs related to the gunman, who had a history of mental health concerns and threatening violence.
There are a myriad of issues here, and we ought to determine what are the ones that we think require further investigation.
To do that, commissioners appointed 4 staff members Monday, including 2 investigators with law enforcement backgrounds. They also requested the Attorney General ask the legislature to give them subpoena power to help gather both testimony and documents.
We hope and expect that people will cooperate with us and come and make their documents and evidence available to us, but some may resist, and we would need a subpoena under those circumstances.
Well, Governor Mills and AG Aaron Fry quickly said they support